Welcome to Impact Perspectives with Impact Charitable, where we explore how capital can be structured to support meaningful outcomes. I am thrilled to be joined by Ted Levinson and Maria Luisa Chavez of Beneficial Returns, an impact-first lender providing flexible capital to small and growing businesses, particularly in sustainable agriculture and emerging markets. Ted Levinson and I first met through a friend I made at the Just Economy Institute. I was exploring loans focused on impact over return, and Ted's name was the first one that came up. He is the founder and CEO of Beneficial Returns, where he spent over a decade pioneering debt-based impact investing that delivers both financial returns and meaningful social outcomes. With more than 20 years of experience in finance, Ted focuses on providing flexible capital, risk-tolerant capital, and provides this to underserved and growing businesses, particularly in sustainable agriculture and emerging markets. So welcome, Ted. It's great to have you with us.
Glad to be here, Cindy.
And Maria Luisa Chavez is with us today, and she and I had the great pleasure of spending the week on a river last summer together, and I got to know her and all of the amazing things about who she is and what she works on. But she leads Beneficial Returns work in Latin America, supporting small and growing businesses with access to capital and financial tools to drive social and environmental impact. She's based in Mexico City and previously co-founded El Buen Socio, providing financial education and loans to rural entrepreneurs. She's also supported high-impact ventures through organizations including Numa Mexico and AALVPs. We will also be joined shortly by Erik Schultz. Erik is the co-founder and advisor to SK2 Fund, and a foundation impact investor with 100% mission-aligned and values-aligned endowment, supporting a range of equitable and sustainable ventures. He brings the same approach to his personal investments and charitable contributions, and he recently opened his first donor-advised fund with Impact Charitable. Erik is such a great example of an impact investor in action, and we'll have a chance to hear from him later. We're going to use his donor-advised fund investment into Beneficial Returns as the basis for our conversation today, to explore what happens when capital is structured around trust, flexibility, and long-term impact. So although we had some connections in the past, we were formally brought together for this transaction through Erik and his interest in moving his money through his donor-advised fund into Beneficial Returns. This is a great connection and a clear example of how philanthropic capital can be deployed in a catalytic way to support enterprises that are often overlooked by traditional finance. And of course, Beneficial Returns represents a strong case for DAF capital as it seeks both meaningful impact and responsible capital stewardship. Through this collaboration, Impact Charitable was able to move that investment at Erik's direction to support the deployment of capital in Latin America and Southeast Asia. So when you all are looking at potential investors, how do you think about sources of capital when you're raising for your funds?
I'll take a stab at that. When I launched Beneficial Returns, I was motivated really by two things. One, the fact that there were great social enterprises making a meaningful dent in poverty in the developing world, but starved for capital. And simultaneously, there were vast sums of philanthropic money sitting in U.S. family foundations and donor-advised funds. And I thought that would be the perfect capital to tap for the types of loans that we're making. This is money earmarked exclusively for charity. It's already received a tax deduction. It has no time horizon. It has no liquidity requirements. It has no financial return requirements. And I didn't coin this term, but somebody called it society's risk capital. And I think that's exactly what it is. So that's what motivated me to launch Beneficial Returns, to connect this dormant capital with these deserving social enterprises.
I'm gonna hire you to say that to all of our folks out in the audience who have donor advised funds, and say it over and over about this being the great risk capital for the organization. So one of the things that we wanted to chat a little bit about today was this focus on sort of impact first and values alignment between Beneficial Returns and the investors that you look at. And certainly we think a lot about this at Impact Charitable. So what sort of stood out to you, or how did you understand the alignment between the two organizations as we started to work together?
We are not here to make our investors rich. If you've got a donor advised fund, that means almost by definition that you've got some money. You're wealthy. And just to put things in perspective, if you have personal assets of $1 million, that puts you in the 1% globally. People that have opened a donor advised fund have likely taken care of all of their immediate needs and have earmarked some money for philanthropy. And so we just start the conversation by letting people know we don't pay a financial return. And we think that is the key first step to make the change that we want to see in the world. The purpose of philanthropy and the purpose of impact investing is additionality, to make things happen that otherwise wouldn't happen. And I've got bad news. If you want a market rate return, you're going to get the market. And we are all here to solve those issues that the market has not fully addressed. I think business has an important role to play. Don't get me wrong. But the pursuit of financial returns when you're trying to eliminate poverty just doesn't make a lot of sense to us at Beneficial Return.
Right. And Maria Luisa, how have you thought about values alignment and the source of capital and the use of capital and aligning those two things as you look at and meet with investees?
I think it's been easier for us to find investors who have already thought about impact first investment outside of the regions we're working in. But we are doing a hard campaign on finding more of those people in the geographies we are deploying the capital, because we know there is money, we know there are values, and people care about the land and about supporting outstanding social enterprises that are taking care of our planet, our resources, and our most vulnerable communities. But the mechanisms that are present in these regions are different than what you guys have in the US. So it's not a misalignment in terms of values. I think it's just a lack of knowledge of how things can be done, and also how the creation of new vehicles and new ways of deploying money and getting impact in return instead of earning more money in return.
We talk a lot at Impact Share about impact first investing and how we clearly define that. I'm wondering if you have any examples of opportunities when you chose not to pursue a particular source of capital or a certain investor based on how the relationship was going and how things were coming together.
Well, Cindy, one of my number one days at Beneficial Returns was when I was able to turn a prospective investor down. It took about 8.5 years to reach that stage, but I'm not going to name names, but we have a policy of not working with jerks. And so it was really refreshing to be able to tell this guy that we didn't want his money. Through most of our 10-year history, we've really struggled to attract investors. And so when we turned the corner and were able to become a little more selective with who we worked with, it was a great relief. But frankly, that's very rare that we run into those situations. When we tell people that it's a 7-year commitment to invest in beneficial returns, we do return capital every 6 months. So you only have to wait 6 months for your first check, but you have to wait 7 years for your final check. And all that you're going to do is get your money back. You're not going to earn a financial return. That weeds out just about all the people that aren't aligned with us. And we're very clear about that from the onset. To make the change that we want to see, we have to shuffle our priorities. And so for those people who prioritize financial return, who prioritize liquidity, who prioritize the least risk possible, we're not the right fit. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to make deep and permanent change in tough environments in Latin America and Southeast Asia.
I would love if you could walk us through how the Reciprocity Fund and beneficial returns work. Sort of what does that look like? How do you think about the folks you work with? What does that process mean? I'd love for you and Maria Luisa to walk us through the fund and how you do that important work.
Our main fund, that is called Beneficial Returns, makes loans to social enterprises fighting against poverty and protecting the environment in Latin America and Southeast Asia. The loans we give to the entrepreneurs are, as Ted mentioned, full of additionality. That means that we're probably one of their first loans from an impact investing fund based in the US and deployed in the geographies we already mentioned. And we are supporting their growth via these loans to let the entrepreneurs invest in CapEx. I don't know if that's a word that everybody understands, but they usually invest in equipment, machinery, maybe infrastructure, vehicles, elements that will accompany their growth and increase their impact in the regions they are working in. The loans we give range from $50,000 to $500,000. So we ask for the entrepreneurs to make monthly payments to us, and we oftentimes set up an impact metric that will waive the last payment for them if they reach their commitment to that metric we choose together. That way we reward their impact and their growth, and it's a very nice gift for the entrepreneurs. We try to build trustful, long-lasting relationships with our borrowers. We like to work with them across years, stages of growth in their companies. So we do a lot of repeat loans. And this also shows that the way we are structuring the loans is working for the value chains we're working in and the enterprises we're supporting. We try not to make the entrepreneur work a lot more for us. So we align with whatever they are measuring already and the impact they are generating already. And then we use that data to report back to our investors and share with them what their investment looks like in the field. The investors who choose our main fund as the main pool of money where they will put their money in will receive no financial returns, but we assure that they will receive 100% of their capital back. This is because we have a loan loss reserve that we have built with our own earnings, but also with the generosity of some people who have granted us money to do that and backed our operations with money to secure the investors' investments. So whenever a new investor comes to the Beneficial Returns main fund, their money is secure and they will receive it every 6 months over a period of 7 years. The commitment with us is always 7 years because that is the way we can leverage the capital invested in our fund and make more than 2 cycles of loans in that period of time. But the investors receive their first payment back 6 months after having invested their money, and every 6 months they will receive a payment. So that way, we have never failed our investors. We have never stopped paying them. We have had cycles that have been finished and then investors that have chosen to reinvest the money because they've seen firsthand the impact they are supporting. We also have a model of participations for investors who are already invested in either Beneficial Returns or the Reciprocity Fund. They can choose to then participate directly in the loans we make. That means they can choose the geography, the value chain, the industry, and feel closer to one particular investment without having to assume the risk of investing their money themselves and also doing the back office part of it, that is due diligence and collection of the payments.
Let's have Ted talk about the Reciprocity Fund, and then I'd love for each of you to share an impact story that you think really speaks to the great work that the entrepreneurs are doing. So Ted, we'll hand it over to you.
Cindy, I think the best way to explain the Reciprocity Fund is to talk about its origins. A few years after I launched Beneficial Returns, one of our investors approached me and he asked why we'd never made a loan to an indigenous enterprise. And I explained that that was certainly something that we would love to do. Indigenous communities are disproportionately poor, and they also are responsible for stewarding a disproportionate amount of our global biodiversity. But these are usually super small organizations. They've never borrowed money before. They're in really remote places. In Latin America, many of them don't speak Spanish as their first language. They're not showing up on LinkedIn. They're not attending SOCAP or other conferences. I had 1,000 reasons why we weren't making these loans. And our investor challenged us and he asked, what would it take for you to make these loans? And that's what led ultimately to the Reciprocity Fund. So we provide unsecured loans up to $1,000 to indigenous enterprises in the same 2 geographies in Latin America and Southeast Asia. Most of our borrowers are cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, but we've also made loans to artisanal crafts businesses, and we're considering right now a loan to an ecotourism company. We've made loans to almost 60 borrowers since we launched Reciprocity Fund. And the way that we were able to address all of those issues that I raised before is a fewfold. Number one, and most importantly, our investors assume 100% of the credit risk. So when you invest in the Reciprocity Fund, we guarantee you're going to lose money because we are making inherently risky loans to folks operating really on the margins. And most of them are one bad harvest away from being unable to repay a loan on schedule. And so unlike our main fund, where our investors get their money back, 1/14 of their money every 6 months, we return capital after 7 years to our investors. So we hold it for 7 years and we return it, less a pro rata share of any money that we've lost. And we've told our prospective investors they shouldn't write a check unless they're willing to lose 20% of their money. And so far, our performance is far better than that. Nearly every one of our borrowers has repaid us. We're on track to return far more than 80% of the money to our investors. And I think, some people might think, wow, a negative 20% return on an investment, that sounds awful. Why would I ever sign up for that? And I like to remind people that when you make a grant, you immediately experience a negative 100% financial return. And so if you can change your mindset and don't think about this as a lousy investment, think about this as a phenomenal grant, right? Because you can make $100,000 investment. In 7 years, we can turn that money twice. We can make $200,000, likely get 80% of your money back. So for the cost of a $20,000 grant, you've permitted $200,000 in loans to indigenous communities. We think it's tremendous leverage. The other ways that we were able to work with indigenous enterprises is we've recruited a 100% indigenous credit committee. These are people who are making the ultimate decisions about whether we make a loan or not, because we have to be mindful of the fact that all capital in all circumstances going to indigenous communities isn't necessarily a positive. We have to be very careful about the unintended consequences of our loans. And also, we've recruited on our staff 2 people who speak indigenous languages, who are indigenous themselves, and who are responsible for helping us find and cultivate relationships with new borrowers.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you are thinking about expanding the idea of return on investment to include a lot of things besides just finance. We talk a lot about that here at Impact Charitable as well. And I love the idea of inclusion and including those voices to help you do this work really well. I think something that speaks to the success of what you're doing, and really glad that you highlighted that with us today. So Maria Luisa, back to you. What's an impact story of something that you've worked on that you think would be particularly interesting, or that you highlight as something that is a great testament to the work that you all are doing at Beneficial Returns?
I can give you an example of a borrower that has great impact in their community and has also graduated from one fund to the other. Would that be interesting? I'm thinking about a company in Belize called Maya Mountain Cacao. They are indigenous, and it's not easy finding indigenous organizations or enterprises in some of the countries in Central America and the Caribbean. But this cooperative gathers more than 50 cacao producers of high quality cacao, and then they sell it to a bigger organization that sources cacao from different countries and sells it to chocolate makers. As you know, cacao is a commodity, and as coffee and other produce, the prices are very variable in the market, and there are good years and very, very, very bad years. But somehow Maya Mountain Cacao has managed to have more stable finance than other organizations. And they came to us first in 2021 to ask for a $45,000 loan from the Reciprocity Fund, since they are 100% indigenous, to borrow money for working capital and just pay for the harvest, and to be able to pay a fair price and very quickly to the producers, so that they wouldn't go sell their cacao that was very good quality to other intermediaries. So that was the first loan. Then in 2023, a couple years later, they asked us for what we call a top-up. They asked us to increase the amount of the loan they already had, and so we gave them $60,000 for the same purpose, paying for the harvest, working capital. We can do that from the Reciprocity Fund. But then last year in 2025, after having been punctual with their payments, very communicative with us whenever they faced any obstacle or any weather event that was not predicted, but always being on time with their payments, they came to ask for another loan, a bigger loan this time, from the main fund, with the purpose of buying a vehicle that could help them move the cacao around the communities they are working in. And so since they have been with us for a couple of years now, a couple of loans that really worked well, and they were planning on investing in a vehicle that could be held as a collateral for us, we decided to finance that loan, because they also needed the working capital still from the main fund. And that way they had, I think it was $120,000 between both loans, and they were approved by the Beneficial Returns Main Fund Committee. That is not very easy to be approved by them. They're a very thorough credit committee. So Maya Mountain has been a client of ours for the past 6 years now. They have been renewing their working capital loan and paying both loans on time and supporting all these cacao producers that have had rough times in the past years, because even when the cacao prices are super high, they are struggling finding working capital, finding clients that are willing to pay those high prices. And so that is a company we hold to our hearts very closely. It's our only client in Belize. Let's hope we can find more organizations there. And that's an impact story that we really like. They produce organic cacao in a regenerative models. Not only the livelihoods of the producers are improving, but also the environment where they live in.
Thanks. I think that's such a great example of the multiple impact themes, and that one company's success can actually help support an entire ecosystem of organic and regenerative farming in a location. So thank you for highlighting that. Welcome, Erik. We are chatting about the impact of beneficial returns and the Reciprocity Fund. So Ted was going to share an impact story with us, and then I'd love to hear from you about what brought you to this investment and what your experience working with us and with beneficial returns has been like. But we'll float over to Ted first.
Thanks,
Sounds
Cindy.
good.
One of my favorite borrowers is Hilltribe Organics. It's Thailand's largest producer of organic eggs. And they work with Karen and Aka families that live outside of Chiang Rai, near the Thai border with Burma. These are people that until a few years ago weren't even recognized as Thai citizens. And oftentimes the family needs to split up and one member of the family goes to the city to earn money to support the family. But with Hilltribe Organics, more of these families are staying together. They're earning regular daily income and are able to preserve their traditional ways of life. So the way Hilltribe Organics works is if a family creates an enclosure to their specifications, they will provide 350 healthy hens to the family. And they'll commit to buy every egg that the family produces every day. With 350 hens, you're looking at about 300 eggs a day. And some of the things that we love about this model is people can raise hens and still do other work. It's not a 8-hour a day, 40-hour a week job. We love that they can earn daily income. And we also love that they can eat the eggs that they don't sell. It's a great source of nutrition. And so this is a model that we think has tremendous legs globally because people eat eggs everywhere and they're threats that people are facing to their traditional ways of life. And we think providing the hens and providing access to market, because many of these eggs are sold in Bangkok, sold in high-end grocery stores, we think it's a great model. Our loan helped them pick up the pace of the number of farms that they were able to work with, and they have always made their payments on time to us.
Amazing. I love the social aspect of that, of keeping families together and building community. And then the fact that families also have a source of nutrition and a source of income. Super important for keeping everybody together. Thank you. So Erik, I wonder if you want to chime in here and share a little bit about why beneficial returns in the Reciprocity Fund was the right thing for you and how you thought about that as an investment from your donor advice fund.
In my former role, I oversaw impact investments at a small foundation called SK2 Fund, which for its history has been really active in financing and supporting social enterprises across the developing world, trying to put investment capital in the hands of really small and micro businesses where conventional investment capital fears to tread. I've since sort of passed on that role to my team, and I've become much more active personally in the same kind of investment focus. And fortunately, my relationship with beneficial returns came out of that long-standing professional relationship with SK2 Fund, where we work directly with beneficial returns in multiple ways, investing in their main fund, investing recoverable grant in the Reciprocity Fund, their indigenous business support fund. We did loan guarantees to try to generate additional investment capital from other sources. And we did loan participations where we would take a piece of an individual loan with an individual business with all the risks that entails to help beneficial returns leverage our loan participation into additional loans to other social enterprises. So we had a wealth of experience. So I had a comfort level with beneficial returns, always having executed on all of these various investments and joint initiatives that we had pursued over the years. So for me, it was a bit of a layup to work with them individually. The question was how. I found myself in a position for the first time last year where a donor advised fund made sense in order to realize a tax deduction, which, let's be honest, is the main reason most people open a donor advised fund. But unlike most people that open a donor advised fund, it's a little bit of a broken system in that once you put money into a donor advised fund, you get the tax deduction right away, whether or not you actually move it onward into worthy initiatives. And I was never going to do it that way. If I was going to go through the trouble of opening one, which by the way was very little trouble with Impact Charitable, then I was going to move it immediately into worthy initiatives, and beneficial returns was at the top of that list because I believe in supporting social enterprises in the developing world, and I believe in moving affordable capital to enterprises that otherwise can't access traditional venues for that. So that was super easy for me. I mean, yes, it was a tax deduction. That was the spur to open it, but it was never going to sit there for me. I had to put it to work right away. And I wanted to find some vehicle where it would be easy for me. And Impact Charitable, thanks to my relationship with Cindy, convinced me that that would be an easy process. And indeed it was. Super minimal paperwork, everything done online, DocuSign. And basically I get to direct the money, but be hands off on the paperwork and nitty gritty. So I don't really see what the excuse for a DAF holder is to not work with an entity like Impact Charitable and moving money to worthy causes.
Well, thank you for that, Erik. I think you're exactly the kind of folks that we love to work with because you did want to move the money out the door. And just to give people a sense of the speed with which Erik was able to do this, we opened the fund for Erik in December, and I believe we closed on our investment into beneficial returns the beginning of March. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it
happened quickly.
Capital can move quickly. And I think the goal for all of us in that is getting it into the hands of these amazing entrepreneurs. And that's really the goal, I think, for all of us who are on this call today, is really thinking about how do we get the money into the hands of people to create that impact. So that's sort of the speed of capital. I think the structure of capital can be really meaningful as well. And I love, Erik, how you mentioned all the ways that you have structured this at SK2 to support beneficial returns and others in terms of guarantees and recoverable grants and loans and all of the things. I wonder, Ted and Maria Luisa, if you want to talk about how you think about the importance of structuring the capital to the entrepreneurs. I know, Ted, you mentioned unsecured loan. That's a big deal for a lot of folks, right? So I wonder if you both want to talk about how you think about putting the capital in the right structure to make it most meaningful for the folks that you're supporting.
Sure. Most people, when they launch a fund, they begin with the question, what do my investors want? Or what does my anchor investor want? Or my ideal investor want? And we started Beneficial Returns with a very different question. We asked, what does the world need? And we chose to serve the needs of social entrepreneurs addressing poverty. And with that first question, we worked backwards and said, what else do social entrepreneurs need? Well, they need affordable capital. And especially in emerging markets, they need long-term capital. It's very hard to secure a loan for longer than 18 months without pledging land in the markets where we operate. Then, of course, we need to be self-sufficient ourselves, financially independent as Beneficial Returns. We need to earn a return. And that ultimately led to the proposition for our investors. So we don't go to investors and tell them that we've got, a really attractive financial investment for them. We come to them and say, we are going to ask you for the capital that we need so that we can serve the needs of social entrepreneurs, and ultimately they can serve the people who benefit from their businesses. And so that's how we approach this work. In our main Beneficial Returns Fund, our loans are secured with collateral. These are more established businesses. They're profitable or nearly profitable. But with our indigenous enterprises, we knew we had to make loans without collateral. And so that's what we do. So all of the decisions that we make are based on the people that we're trying to serve, which, sorry, Erik, it's not the investors. We are not here. We are not here to serve investors. We are here to serve the poor people in the world and also to protect and restore the environment. And folks, that's hard work. It's urgent work. It's long time work, and it's not especially lucrative. And we're okay sharing that news with people. We think that honesty is what more people need to hear.
And I would like just to add, in terms of speed of capital, that we also try to be very fast in deploying the capital, because oftentimes these entrepreneurs have urgent needs because of the urgent work they're doing. And although we don't do magic and our due diligence process is what it is, and we're very thorough when we are analyzing a new opportunity, but we do try to make it happen as quickly as possible for those enterprises to be able to have that capital as soon as possible and grow their work.
And Erik, I know you have known of beneficial returns and had a relationship for some time, but how do you think about the balance of risk and impact and return when you're thinking about beneficial returns as a partner? Like, what does that equation look like in your mind? And how do you compare those things when thinking about moving money into something like this?
That's a great question. I think conventional finance is heavily oriented towards the investor, as Ted spoke at. One of the things that attracted me to beneficial returns immediately was just their honesty. Just coming at you like, yeah, you're not going to make money. You might make your money back. You know, and in return, we're going to be able to provide very affordable capital to deserving social entrepreneurs that are making a difference in their communities, in their regions, in the world. And if the driver is what the investor needs, then those enterprises are never going to get the funding they need to grow and help more lives and protect more land or more waters. So for me, the honesty and transparency that beneficial returns brings forth is hugely attractive. I'd much rather have that than somebody that pretends you can have your cake and eat it too. Will deliver market rate returns and outsize impact. In my opinion, that's a quixotic quest. I think.
Can we say bullshit on this podcast?
You said it, not me.
You can say it. You bet.
So so I appreciate that, and so for me, this is a charitable pool of money in the donor advised fund. So I'm not really worried about return at all. I would like to recycle it so I can keep supporting worthy ventures over a long amount of time. And that's exactly what beneficial returns offers and executes.
Yeah, can I talk a moment about the word Erik used, recycle? Because I think this is key. And if you have a donor advised fund and all you're doing is using it to give away money, you are missing out on a huge opportunity. And to be clear, I would never, ever discourage somebody from giving all their money away right away because the need is urgent. But if you have a donor advised fund and you expect that fund to be around for a few years, you ought to find ways to recycle that. And by that, I mean, use it for impact investing, get that money back for future grant making. And I hope folks will write checks to beneficial returns. But if our work is not your bag, if you care about domestic issues, if you care only about supporting women and girls, if you care about early childhood education, if you care about science and technology, there are impact investments out there available for you. And you often won't hear it, but you can use your donor advised fund to make those investments. And what a great opportunity to do good with the money now and recycle it so that at a later date, you can give it away.
I think that's a really important point and a challenge for those of us trying to educate those interested in starting donor advised funds or those that maybe already have them but don't know that this option exists. So, to me, it's just, you're just lazy. You're not being charitable by opening a DAF. It's what you do with it that counts. So get off your ass and move the money out the door.
We like to say, get off your DAF.
Get off your DAF. I like it.
Get off your DAF. Get the money out in the world. Absolutely. Well, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'd love to give everyone a chance to just have a closing reflection from the conversation, maybe what you hope more investors understand about beneficial returns and the work that you do, what's an opportunity you see for folks with donor advised funds, or how you think about values alignment. Any of those things, just a closing reflection from each of you would be great. And we'll start with you, Ted.
Sure. I have a message for people that already have a donor advised fund, and that is to let them know that money can move. You can move your donor advised fund in totality very, very easily. I think the financial services world is very adept at creating as many obstacles as possible to make things as sticky as possible. But if you're not getting the services that you want, if you're not able to make the impact investments that you want out of your donor advised fund, there are options out there, and moving it is easy. Start now.
Fantastic. Erik, we'll have you follow that.
Well, I think I've more or less said my piece on DAFs, but I will say that, I perceive that, a lot of people, reason the money sits passive is they don't want to deal with finding worthy recipients. They don't want to deal with grant agreements or loan contracts, or they don't want to do that kind of stuff. And that's where an ally like Impact Charitable is so attractive to me, because I can be completely hands off about it. I mean, I can talk with Cindy's team and say, hey, I'd like to move money to this entity in this way. and they do the due diligence and come back to me when it's ready or not. And I don't have to lift a finger. So it's perfect for a lazy impact investor like myself to be able to make a difference without having to slog through the paperwork. And I'm super grateful for having an intermediary ally like Impact Charitable.
Having seen you in the kayak last summer, I would never call you lazy, Erik. So let me just be super clear about that.
Fair enough.
All right. Maria Luisa, do you have final thoughts for us today?
I would say start small. Start doing impact investing with whatever pocket money you can put into work. We can receive that money and put it to work. And let's see how you feel. 100% you will feel happy, content, and very satisfied with the impact that very small dollars can make. And start small, but start now, and then we can grow together.
Thank you. I think that's a fantastic point to end on today. I want to thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. We love lifting up the great work that you all are doing and hope that you have much continued success working with these amazing people around the world. So thank you for being with us, and we'll look forward to connecting again soon.